Next, let's talk about New Orleans because the Super Bowl is going to be held there. And we know what that means. That means a whole bunch of prostitution arrests are going to happen under the guise of rescuing sex trafficking or suspected sex trafficking victims. So let's go do that. So let's first start off with this report from this TV.
Major sporting events like the Super Bowl. WDSU reporter Anam Siddiqui explains how the city is cracking down on this crime.
New Orleans FBI Special Agent in Charge Lionel Myrtle says the department leads a child exploitation and human trafficking task force for the city. Now, with the Super Bowl in town, they are adding their 55 field offices, state and local partners to help out.
We never limit our resources to just the local resources. It's really the whole nation.
Up as a result of more police enforcement and education.
We're reporting more. It's not that it's happening more, but we're reporting more.
Oh boy. So it's not that it's happening more, it's just that it's being reported more. So that's kind of interesting. It's interesting that they're sending in 55 police officers just for that one suspected, forced labor in the sex trade, but they couldn't really figure out how to prevent that terrorist attack, that horrible terrorist attack that terrorized New Orleans last month in leading up to the Super Bowl. I mean, it just sounds like another misallocation of resources again. So let's listen to this report.
1.5 million people will come to New Orleans, and large events like those also attract human traffickers. So, how could labeling on bars of soap help human trafficking victims? LBJ tells you in this morning's Moving New Orleans Forward.
Soap Up NOLA is an event that's happening on Saturday, this coming Saturday, February 1st. And in the morning, basically what we're doing is we are hosting over 200 volunteers into our headquarters space on Carondelet Street. And we are labeling soap, literally bars of soap, makeup wipe packages, things like that, with the human trafficking hotline number.
What does the training entail?
The training is basically a seminar about what is suspicious behavior.
Wow. Did you catch that? Did you catch those legs there? Oh my gosh. Did you see those legs? That man chasing that, or trying to intimate that they were chasing, somebody, a man was chasing a woman in that ad. I mean, that is some serious propaganda there. Where did they get that footage is what I want to know. Did they get that from one of their movies, their propaganda movies? I mean, I've been in the business a long time, you guys. I've seen a lot of things. Mostly what I've seen hoes chasing down some customers. That's what I've seen. I remember one time I was in Hawaii and, I was out at night just walking around with my friends, and, there was a gal who was definitely working this one corner. She looked to be, 30, 40 years oldish. She had a great tan, great figure. She had on a really cool, dress. And she had on those clear, high heel platforms. And she was walking around really, trying to find somebody. And then finally, this guy walks by her. And she reaches out her big old foot with her big old high heels with the platforms on and trips him to make him stop and talk to her. That's usually how it really goes in the real world. It's not, men chasing after women. That's for dramatic purposes there in this newscast, right? So that's how you always know that you're looking at propaganda. But the soap thing is wild too, right? Bars of soap, makeup remover. I mean, are they trying to imply that, prostitutes are dirty, that we're dirty and we need soap and we need to have our makeup removed? I mean, is that what they're trying to imply? I mean, it's just, how are they, doing all these trainings and raising all this propaganda, trying to tell people, how to recognize us and call the police on us. And, if you're somebody that doesn't have, the right papers, you can be deported right now. So it's really dangerous. We have families, we have friends, we're members of the larger community here, and we don't want to see anything bad happen to people in the sex trade or even sex trafficking victims. If you're arresting sex trafficking victims in these prostitution sting operations where you're dressing up as a pretend customer to defraud somebody into, trying to identify as a sex trafficking victim so they can get out of trouble for being arrested for prostitution charge, be brought on them by the district attorney or the prosecutor. I mean, it's just, this is not the way, America. This is a waste of money. Yeah. So yeah, these soap people, here's one of their sites where they say 80% of the commercial sex acts occur in hotels. Really? Where'd you get that number? Is that a made-up number? Because that looks like a made-up number to me. There's no documentation for that statement. There is no documentation for that statement. And then they have this other one over here. It says 69% of hotels housed sex trafficking victims. So I'm confused here. Are you targeting the hotels with your soap because some workers work out of hotels and you're trying to raise suspicion and policing and propaganda to get people to tell on people that are working out of hotels and being housed in the hotels? I mean, why would you want somebody to lose their housing if it's in a hotel? I mean, I just don't understand this. I don't understand this propaganda and, the soap and the makeup remover. It just sounds like fake news to me. It's total fake news. Yeah. Be aware of that one, America. But I'll tell you, what's really wild right now is the whole deal that has just come out in the news in New Orleans about the New Orleans Saints, emails that they have going with the damage control over the Catholic Church clergy's sexual abuse crisis. So, I mean, at the same time that, New Orleans has got 55 police officers, FBI agents running around. I mean, I know they need some new FAA people, that planes are crashing all over the place. So yeah, so this article is very, very interesting. It's about New Orleans church leaders, the Catholic Archdiocese, bracing for the fallout from a list of predatory Catholic priests. They had to turn to an unlikely ally, the front office of the New Orleans National Football League's franchise, the New Orleans Saints. The records which the New Orleans Saints and the Catholic Church had long sought to keep out of the public's view revealed the New Orleans Saints executives played a major extensive role than previously known in the public relations campaign to mitigate the fallout from the Catholic Archdiocese sexual abuse crisis. The emails shed new light on the Saints' foray into the fraught topic far from the gridiron, so far from their own, lane, because you're, professional football team, but yet you're providing media crisis management to the New Orleans Archdiocese because their sexual abuse by their clergy, you're trying to keep that under wraps. Weird. So it says that the behind the scenes efforts driven by the team's devout Catholic owner who has long enjoyed a close relationship with the city's embattled archbishop. So the archbishop in Catholic speak means like this is the top guy, it's the top dog, right, of the Catholic Church there in New Orleans. So he's being embattled because the Catholic Archdiocese that he runs, that the Archbishop runs, is hiding the list of Catholic clergy who sexually abused children in New Orleans. The emails also show how various New Orleans institutions, from a sitting federal judge to the local media, rallied around the Catholic Archdiocese leaders at that critical moment. So the New Orleans Saint NFL executives were so involved in the church's damage control that the team spokesman briefed his boss on a 2018 call with the city's top prosecutors hours before the church released a list of clergymen accused of sexual abuse. The call, the spokesman said, allowed us to take certain people off the list. Wow. So the New Orleans Saint, this NFL team, worked with the city prosecutors to remove certain clergy members of the Catholic Church from the list. Oh my God. The New Orleans Saints team officials were among the first people outside the church to view that list. It was a carefully curated list, yet it undercounted the roster of suspected pedophiles. The disclosure of those names invited civil claims against the church and drew attention from federal and state law enforcement. So here you have, ladies and gentlemen, the National Football League's New Orleans Saints executives trying to keep from the public the list of names of clergy who were suspected of child abuse, because they didn't want federal and state law enforcement to see that list either. So here we have all these public dollars going into all these anti-prostitution sting operations, trying to rescue people from sex trafficking. And we know that sex trafficking, one of the elements is sexual abuse, right? It's forced sex. But here the New Orleans Saints, the NFL, top executive leaders of the New Orleans Saints are trying to cover up sexual abuse of minors. So this is really wild here when we have all these public entities coming out stating that they're, against sex trafficking, but really they're for sex trafficking, it looks like. The emails obtained by the AP sharply undercut assurances that the Saints gave fans about the public relations guidance 5 years ago, when they assured that they had provided only minimal assistance to the church. The team went to court to keep its internal emails secret. So not only are they trying to keep secret the names of alleged clergy members of the Catholic Church who committed sexual abuse on children, they fought to keep their involvement secret from the press. Oh boy. So, yeah. So it's a watershed moment for the Catholic Church. The list, marked Catholic New Orleans. This is apparently very religious, and a lot of Catholic people live there. They're waiting for the church to give their, mea culpa. Oh, sorry, we goofed up. we allowed a whole bunch of kids to be sexually abused. And then we covered up the list of, possible clergy members who did the abuse. Sorry. Oops, our bad. It came at a time when the church leaders were seeking to retain public trust, the financial support that they reckoned with generations of abuse and mounting litigation that eventually drove the Archdiocese of New Orleans into bankruptcy. So the Archdiocese of New Orleans is in bankruptcy because they've had to pay out so many claims, civil claims, on behalf of people who were sexually abused as children by the New Orleans Catholic Church. That litigation, filed in 2020, involved more than 600 people who say they were abused by clergy. The case has produced a trove of still secret church records, said to document years of abuse claims and a pattern of church leaderships transferring clergy without reporting their crimes to law enforcement. So when the church became aware of all of these 600 victims, as they were happening in real time, when the people were children, they would just quietly transfer these clergy members onto another parish to abuse another group of children without ever reporting them to law enforcement. I mean, here all the human trafficking raise awareness has, got all these signs of what forced labor looks like in the sex trade, so people can snitch and call in on, your average hoe on the street as being a potential victim when she might not even have a sex trafficker, right? But yet the church is going through great lengths to cover up all of these sex crimes from law enforcement so that their clergy don't get arrested for the crimes of sexual abuse. So there's a lot to unpack here, and I'm going to let you guys do that. But that's why those of us in the sex trade do not take seriously all of this human trafficking hysteria, because we work in the sex trade and we know what goes on in the sex trade. And so to see that, all these powerful institutions like the NFL, New Orleans Saint executives, get to work with all the powerful archdioceses of the Catholic Church in New Orleans to cover up sexual abuse, while you're pointing at us and trying to tell the public, oh no, look over there at those adult consensual people engaging in private sexual acts on their own terms. Yeah, go look at them. Don't look at us. Because we all know that the Catholic Archdiocese of the United States gets mad amount of money from sex trafficking, from the federal government's sex trafficking slush fund, to provide services to victims, right? They don't want their own victims inside their own church to get anything. They just want to look like they're doing good, and they're providing sexual services, they're providing social services, to all these sex trafficking victims. So, it's within their best interest to manufacture, everybody as a sex trafficking victim so they can provide services to them. But we all can see that being involved with the Catholic Church could mean that you could be sexually assaulted by clergy, and that the Catholic Church is going to cover it up. So that's a non-starter there. That's why we're hoping, some of the funding that's going to get cut is to all these sex trafficking groups who are actually the sex traffickers. Yes.